Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me, we got Jameson, we got Ty. This podcast presented as always by the Pigskin Podcast Network and our good friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Make sure to hammer that promo code TPP in if you're in a state where that's legal. Otherwise, DraftKings is fun. Always a good time with those daily fantasy sports contests. But we are here to talk about a couple little bits of news. We finally have a little bit of actual concrete news to talk about. And let's just start this off with the news that OU dropped today. Some rumors and stuff had happened. Some leaks had leaked out about the spring game date. Well, those just got confirmed. It is April 23rd on a Saturday, 3 p.m. And after the game, they're going to do the Baker Mayfield statue revealed. We had heard these details, but hearing them finalized, personally, I gotta admit, I'm bummed out because I'll be out of town. But Jameson, are either of y'all going to be in town? Because we probably need someone watching that.
I am on the edge. I may not be, and it's really hurting me. But let me say this: 3 o'clock. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful timeline. And we've always talked about 2:30 kickoffs. It's like, oh, it's just wonderful because you can sleep in, wake up, and not really have to push yourself to get to tailgating. This way you can just do your thing. You can tailgate. And then afterwards, if you want a nightcap in Norman, there's going to be a statue ceremony.
Yeah. I love it. Go ahead, Ty. You got it.
I was just going to say, I think the time is great too. Cause it's a really short event as well. So yeah.
Not only that, but with that period of April, usually, back in the late Stoops era, they would always kick off at 11. You never know what type of bad weather you got having it coming in. 3 p.m. at least, the sun's up. It's all the way. It is hot. It's going, but not too hot. And I think that's kind of the perfect time. I don't believe it interferes with the Masters. That's awesome for people who like golf. But really, it should just be an excellent day in Norman. And I don't know if I'll be able to go from Fredericksburg up to Norman that quick. I think I would have to leave at 7:30, but I know I'm certainly jealous of the people who will get to go see that. No news on anything in terms of concerts. Probably not going to be a thing.
What kind of music does Brent Venables like? That is the big question. What do you think?
There's no way it isn't. Look, it's either exactly the type of music that we heard in the Lincoln area, like the Trace Atkins, all that sort of stuff, or it's just strictly gospel stuff. I'm sure you could get some Lecrae up here.
I mean, what am I saying? Do we think that Brent's gonna be doing anything? It's all Thad. What kind of music does Thad Turnipseed like? That is the real question. He does not give me many vibes of having loving music. I could see him just being a person who just drives in silence.
Thad is absolutely, in my mind, a parrot head. He is a Jimmy Buffett guy. And that's the
now we're talking here.
Yeah.
That is
Ooh-wee.
He looks like someone who has been to no less than 8 Jimmy Buffett concerts secretly, and nobody knew.
Yeah. So for the unaware, we're talking about Thad Turnipseed, which is just a great name. Who is what is his position at OU? President of football operations or something like that?
I don't know.
Something.
He's just like a dude that just gets stuff done. He's I don't even know. He's like Salvatore from The Sopranos.
Executive director for football administration.
Yeah, so he's a guy that came from Bama under Saban, went to Clemson, and then has come over. So that's who we're talking about. Look him up if you're not familiar. But yeah, I think I could see Thad being the type of dude that just lets loose at Burning Man, but under an alias. But he's taking a jet out there, with Instagram models and just going crazy, but just under some alias. And then, like you guys said, I totally agree with the Jimmy Buffett concerts, but I think, just day-to-day life, I'm trying to say this respectfully, I'm getting Derek from Step Brothers in the car, saving the solo for a sweet child of mine type vibes.
Oh my gosh.
This guy screams dad whenever you look at pictures of him.
In reference to the spring game, I think the key with Thad Turnipseed, if he's the one sort of making the decision, he's going to do what's best for the business. That's his thing. That's his entire role. Is he's just a dude that gets stuff done. So I don't know that he'd let his personal preferences bleed in. So we'll see.
Thad 100% is a yacht rock guy. Like I'm all in on yacht rock Thad.
I don't know. I could see Thad being like friends with like Kanye and like on the phone with Kanye right now, talking about how to like write another post about Skeet.
Oh no.
Well, hey, oh god. Well, look, maybe that's a Drake concert everyone's talking about. Maybe it was also just delayed to the spring. And
yeah, Drake wasn't even here for the announcement. He was just here to hang out with his friend Thad.
Yeah, no.
just dress rehearsal.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, that was just a warm up for the OU spring game.
Or maybe
Drake.
it's a Baker Mayfield concert.
A Baker Mayfield like centric concert. I don't know what that would be. What ties does Baker have to music really?
Here I am typing in Baker Mayfield music.
He had that one dance video before he ever played a snap that went viral.
He did do the. It was like the. Was it the Dougie? Did he do the Dougie or was it the? I can't remember which one it was. He was just kind of going off. I don't know what Baker was doing there.
I saw him like sing. I think it was ironically enough, painfully enough. I think it was California Girls. At like a cottage party in like in the kitchen one time. It was that day that we lit a cooler on fire because it was on the stove, and then someone, possibly Baker, bumped it and turned the stove on and melted it.
That was the day Katy I met my
Perry
fiance.
Loves Oklahoma.
Was it really?
Katy Perry. Yeah,
a lot of stuff happened. Yeah,
we need to keep Katy Perry away from the program as far as possible. I don't need her like messing up Dylan Gabriel like she messed up Trevor Knight. You know, she is a pox.
Yeah, that's funny.
But I mean, did she really mess up Trevor Knight though?
I mean, that's a good point. Maybe Trevor Knight was always headed for that. He probably was. But that being said, everything was good. We just beat the crap out of West Virginia. You know, OU looked fine, and then that TCU game, Trevor Knight just looked garbage. So, who's to say? But Baker Mayfield, that statue, that's going to be such a really, really cool moment. You know, one of the greatest Sooners, and really for for you and I specifically, Jameson. You know, that was our guy in college. You know, everyone who goes to OU has their time there, and they have their guy. You know, if you grew up in the 80s, you know, you had the boss, someone like that. You know, some people had Jamel Holloway. We had Baker. You know. And I think that's pretty great. And it's going to be a cool moment to see his statue up there at Heisman Park. And I got to ask, what, if you were, let's just say, you know, no rules, you can do whatever you want. What's the pose going to be, Jameson? What are you posing Baker in?
It has to be the plant the flag, but I think it's quite telling, because I was actually going to bring this up as a discussion point too, that the Photoshop of the OU football tweet of kind of him in a similar stance to the Heisman, I think that's pretty telling whenever you put him right around that Heisman Park slot in the picture, in that stance, that you kind of got to think it looks like that.
The best part about that was a little subtitle that said, you know, not accurate rendition to size. Like, no, the Baker statue is not like 200 feet tall. So, yeah, no, I that's probably the good bet. You know, that little kind of stiff arm against OSU, for sure. But I mean, the flag plant would be so damn cool if they're not going to do it, but it would be so cool if they did. Ty, what would you have him do? I know you have a good answer.
I would have.
Oh, here it is.
I would have the private part grab from the Kansas game. No doubt. No doubt.
I wasn't
one hand on his swimsuit area, the other hand middle finger to the sky. I think perfectly. This is a G-rated podcast. I'm gonna tell you guys after, for the listeners, the second that we used the second that we got to use the Schooner Pod business card for a business dinner, my amount of I want to take this seriously just went from, well, not that it was low. That sounds disrespectful, but We got to keep this G-rated for the advertisers, James. So we're trying to get more
Look,
advertisers.
The man got one taste of an expensive
A
euro and a bottle of wine,
Once
and
I
we
figured out you
finally
can
got to
order
use the
bottles.
card in Vegas. We had a nice conference of the minds. Delightful meal with some euros, bottle of wine, a couple beers to go around, just talking about where we've come. And it was just kind of nice to be like, hey, look, this hard work actually paid for something. So, delightful moment there for sure. But Ty's hooked. He wants to take this thing to the moon. I love it. It's proof of concept.
I just want to take it back to that restaurant and get another bottle.
Oh, incredible. Incredible.
Anyways. So here's
you go ahead.
We have to assume that some people know. I'm curious. I will say before we move on, I think the Baker in sort of a Heisman-esque pose is realistic, and I think it sort of poses the question, certainly because they were made at the same time, I believe. I wonder if the Kyler one is going to be in the same pose, or if it's going to be, maybe he's posed up to throw or something like that. That's obviously later down the road, but
my Kyler guess is he's going to be running with the ball in one hand, like dangerously far away from his body. Because that's kind of one of his like signature kind of scrambles. I bet that's what they try to go off of, because that's like that is the one attribute, and we've had a lot of great running backs or running quarterbacks in the past at OU, but Kyler like had this very distinct style to him that a lot of guys never had, and I think they're going to try to. I think you would try to emphasize that. So I bet it's him with one ball, the ball in one hand. Let's hopefully it's not anywhere close to the ground where he can fumble it. But that's my bet on Kyler.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on. Let's talk about the combine a little bit before we get into some OU basketball and bring on a special guest. Not as much special, but a guest. But the combine, I mean, what is one takeaway from the combine that y'all saw? Because there's a lot of people that didn't do all of the tests. But overall, I guess I'll start. My biggest takeaway is Kennedy Brooks. I was worried about him coming into the 40-yard dash. I thought he could have a chance to run a 4.75. Like, I was worried he was going to do that and just plummet. Sub 4.6 at 4.59, I understand that's not that fast as a running back, but as a guy that everyone knew he was going to have a slow 40, I thought that was a little bit faster than I thought, and that made me feel a lot better about this guy getting drafted, highest day 2, and then definitely an early day 3 kind of guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. That's definitely kind of been a bit of a knock on Brooks, and he's not a bad running back by any means. He was excellent at OU this year, but he never felt like an NFL type of guy. So improving that speed, getting that good number, hey, there you go. That just adds to his excellent tape he had at OU.
Yeah, I think it, like you guys said, it obviously you never want to be a guy that is in a situation where there's sort of doubts about you, but when there are, it sort of helps to have a good performance. And I think almost maybe you can create one of those situations where the combine is the combine, you can sort of study just for the test and not necessarily the knowledge, which is becoming sort of a criticism of the combine, especially with opt-outs and such. But there is sort of that ability as well to, I'm trying to think of the right term, not degrade, but lower expectations and then overperform, which can be a benefit. So I think he does have a decent NFL future as a back, and sometimes as we've seen, lower hype coming into something can help you in your career, because maybe you end up going to a better place. So
yeah, and I'm just kind of flipping through some research here, and the great All Sooners, the OU's SI site, shout out my guy Josh Calloway, put together a list of guys who kind of ran similar speeds. So like 2019, think of David Montgomery, who ran a 4.62, Devin Singletary 4.66. James Conner was a 4.65 guy in 2017. Kareem Hunt ran a 4.62. So like that's the type of archetype I think that is perfect for Kennedy Brooks. So having his speed kind of around there, that's not that bad. If he can reach, that type of status in the NFL, I think that's a really good career for a guy like Kennedy Brooks.
Absolutely. You named a lot of Pro Bowlers.
Yeah, that would be like definitely kind of a ceiling type of situation for Kennedy. But I think more than anything, the biggest impressive kind of players, no pun intended, the defensive line. Incredible performances from Perion Winfrey and Nick Bonito. Bonito was insane. Jameson, the speed we've seen on the D line, doesn't it kind of make you think, like, why are we playing these guys every single snap?
Perion should have had a better time. He pulled his hamstring at the end of that run too. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out to OU Pro Day and runs, half, 0.05 faster. Yes, it was great and all, but honestly, it could have been a lot better. I expected Perion to run much faster than 4.89. But I bet you it gets down lower. Nick Bonito. Yes, I think he got a lot of hype because he's getting put at defensive lineman. And whenever you put up that kind of speed, as a defensive end at a 4.54, your eyes open up. But he's kind of an hybrid outside linebacker defensive end. So I think that's right about where he needs to be. There's going to be some teams that are worried and probably won't pick him because he doesn't fit into a perfect mold. But we've seen it, like guys like Obo Okoronkwo, that now Super Bowl champion and played a significant role in that defensive line. Pass rushers, any shape, size, speed, as long as you can get to the quarterback, you have a spot in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's a certain D linemen have just been getting, leaner, faster, stronger. So I would say like lighter type of guys, those edge rush type of guys, like you said, they're very valuable. So I think that's really a really good sign for Nick Bonito. And, he's not for everyone. He's not for every defense. Not every defense probably wants a guy that fast, but I'll tell you what, I think he's going to make a defense that, has a good fit, if he gets into a good scheme, he's going to be a very, very fun NFL player to watch for a while.
Yeah, I think it'll be really, I don't necessarily have any pure combine takes about the guys, but I think it'll be very interesting to see where they go in the draft and then how they end up developing in the next year or two or so, because I'm very curious about, like you guys said, we've had good performances. We had good performance in the Senior Bowl, obviously of note. And it will be very interesting to see how different teams in the NFL, where you can look at someone with a much better resume than when they're coming out of high school and evaluate someone individually and then place them within your organization. It'll be interesting to see how all of these players coming, particularly from OU's defense, end up being placed and then utilized in their effectiveness in those positions, because there's sort of that lingering question about how they were used. I don't think it's any surprise that they all ran very fast 40-yard dash times. That seemed to be like the only priority of our defense was speed. It was in the name, speed defense. So I would have liked for us to have, and I think we're moving to this, like, effective defense. But the speed defense, of course, are going to be fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would like, sure, get the opponents off the field defense would have been a better scheme. Hopefully we're moving to that.
Speedily getting them off the field would be great. But, it's interesting.
Everything the opposite of speed.
Yeah.
Thick defense.
There have been thick defense. And, there have been a couple comments in recent days, primarily from Perion Winfrey. Really, he had a really interesting interview with the Oklahoma Breakdown a while ago. So this is really, really old news. But, he said he was pretty much, kind of playing out of position under Grinch, that Grinch wasn't really kind of using him the way that he wanted him to, that they weren't running downhill enough, which is weird because that seems pretty anti what Grinch does. So I don't even,
I think the more we learn about it, Bobby, it's Grinch was playing to his wanting rather than the players wanting. And a coach is never going to be good if they're stuck in their ways. They have to adapt to their players. And no matter how much you believe in your system and in the speed D, and if everyone does this the correct way, it's going to work. No, what you need to do as a coach is you look at what you have, you look at the deck of cards that you have, and then you play them the way that you are dealt. So you can't just try to get hands that you don't have the cards for.
Yeah, you can't just, jam a round peg into a square hole, basically. That just doesn't work. But yeah, no, I think we covered the combine pretty good. I will say one note that I had seen on the spring game that I forgot to bring up. We're still waiting on our special guest, old Boatin Blake, to come on to the show. If you looked at the spring game announcement and everything, there was a very intriguing section when it came to tailgating, which had all it just said was to be announced. More details coming soon. ... And the rumor mill around that is that allegedly they're considering bringing back Lindsay Street tailgating.
Ooh. Now, would that change your location? Where would you go?
I would stay on Brooks, absolutely, because the Lindsay's for the youth. They're for the young, the younger generation to go wild, have a crazy time. I'm too old to be trying to fight them out for stakes, to try to make sure like my spot doesn't get uprooted overnight by a bunch of random fraternity guys. I don't want to deal with that. So I like my little spot over in Brooks. It's a nice spot, love it. Really close to the stadium still. That's more my speed. But that being said, atmosphere wise, you got to bring it back. You got to have that row of tailgating back, because it feels blank on that side of the stadium.
See, I think I don't know. I had higher hopes for that. I had an idea maybe that we had someone at least sort of notable for the performance, and they were going to be performing both like before at the tailgate event and then after there was some sort of event. I think bringing Lindsay tailgating back would be great, but I think for the spring game, unless they said this is the only spot you can tailgate for the spring game, I think it's a bad idea, because then obviously the spring game draws in fewer people than a regular game. And I think if you just did normal tailgating spots and Lindsay, you would just end up with sort of patchy. We'd be looking like, Kevin Durant's hair from above, like the
yikes.
Just patchiness everywhere of little tailgates. And it would sort of diminish the atmosphere. I really think that for the spring game specifically, because the stadium's at a third capacity, realistically at most, that you got to really sort of choke down that tailgate environment or that tailgate area to create a nicer environment. So I will say, having as we're waiting for Blake, I'll just sort of continue to orate on this. I will say OU, I wish, did a better job of organizing tailgating into a sort of a smaller area that people can actually group up, because that's the advantage, right? That's the only thing that Ole Miss has going for them with the Grove, is they just keep it in a little area. If OU they would never do it on the South Oval because of, their landscaping. But if OU said, hey, you can only tailgate on the North Oval and then that strip of grass that sort of runs parallel to Boyd right by Campus Corner, if all the tailgating was hooked into that one little sort of J of a couple acres of grass that right bumped up to Campus Corner and is fairly close to the stadium, if we said those are the only spots you could tailgate, OU would have a world-class tailgating environment. Our thing is that it's separated from, it's just sort of little areas of very thin things, which is good for moving around, and then it's separate from the bars. But if that's the secret sauce to the people that have, what's considered best in the nation tailgating environments, is they just know the size of the area and they crunch it down and keep everyone in a party atmosphere. So
yeah, but then you lose some spots too, and it's a win-lose scenario here, because then some people are going to be upset that they can't go off in their older spots. A lot of people have been in the same spots for a long time. Some people don't want to have to deal with the raucous environment of a place right next to Campus Corner and get really crowded. There's going to be people that are going to bitch either way.
Yeah.
Well, you can never make everyone happy.
That's true. It's tricky. There's not a perfect way to do it. I mean, I guess if there was one, it'd be Ole Miss. Really is the closest thing to too perfect, which Ty knows about more than we do. But I don't know. It's about culture. It's about trying to figure out how to just get it together. And I'm intrigued to see what we do going forward because look, honestly, they gotta step it up before the SEC move because we're about to get kind of tailgated completely off the board just with how that level of tailgating is just too good. LSU, Ole Miss, really just about everyone.
I don't know. There's a lot of sort of baked in, just, oh, this is great type thing. It's not to start just throwing people under the bus, but it's kind of like San Antonio, like it looks great. And the pictures, everyone that like you go there and you're like obliged to say that it was cool, but then you get there and you're like, all right, like, okay.
Fair enough. I mean, I that's fair.
It's like
I couldn't
LA.
say.
It's very LA like.
It's
SEC
overhyped
tailgating. Well, so, some areas, some things maybe live up to the hype, but then the rest of it, you're like, it's just a bunch of people outside in tents.
It's like a speech about Porsches, a little bit overhyped, that sort of deal. Anyways, we got Boatin Blake on. We're about to bring him on real quick, but first, got to hit his music because that's a saying. Hello and welcome to the Big 12 tournament preview. We bring on Boatin Blake, our college basketball analyst, gambling analyst, etc., etc., etc. The madness has begun. I'm sure this is like taken. We're recording this like minutes after Chattanooga just hit a game winner to win the SoCon. So Blake's buzzing apparently. I don't know.
Mox! I knew it was always the Mox! I knew it from the beginning. Plus 200 conference future, easiest cash of my life. Had Georgia State tonight too, plus 250 to win the Fun Belt. I know, I'm hitting my conference futures, and tomorrow we got the Jacksonville Dolphins, plus 600. Could be my biggest bet cashed ever if the Jacksonville Dolphins can win tomorrow versus Bellarmine. And
what? Man, you are drowning in the crumbs right now. What? I've never heard of these teams.
This is the perfect season right now, and we're going to talk a little Big 12 tournament, and I love the Big 12 tournament, but nothing is better than these one-bid leagues where the entire season is on the line for these small schools, and a lot of we saw it with Longwood, a lot of teams searching for their first time. Go dancing. Longwood is dancing. That's all we know right now. But we're in the midst of
such a bad name.
Hey,
Longwood goes dancing.
That's the it's always look for Longwood. The first time's always a special time. It's just been waiting to go for a while. So Blake. Look, we all know we love the big dance. We talk about it every year. We do the big March Madness preview, but I'm with you. Nothing. This week of just college basketball. The conference tournaments. It's just so fun. It's just it's just a shock to the system. It's wonderful stuff. I got to say the Big 12 tournament, even though it's missing Oklahoma State, I think this will be one of the bigger, better tournaments of this season.
I think so too. We honestly have a great structure where we're going to see some pretty elite matchups. I know a lot of other conferences have started to switch to staggering it, so it makes it easier on some of the top teams, but we'll potentially get to see some, maybe like a Kansas-Baylor rematch, a Kansas-Texas Tech. Maybe the Frogs get hot. Maybe the Longhorns do something that I haven't seen them do all season and like actually beat teams on the road or at a neutral site. So I think we have some good quality opponents in this that are going to make at least the first round matchups really fun. And then I think it's only going to bolster the 1 seeds, the 2 seeds are kind of our top tier, what we see in the end. So getting very excited for it.
Yeah, Jameson, you obviously big basketball guy as well. What have your thoughts been on the Big 12 as a whole this year? And do you think we can see a pretty fun tournament?
Yeah, I think it should be fun. It's been a sloppy year, obviously, but there's just some teams that they've shown a lot of, spark. Then all of a sudden, they just look like crap in some games. Like Texas Tech, I'm worried about that team because sometimes they just come out cold, but then sometimes you're like, this team could go to like the Elite Eight or Final Four. Like when it comes down to tournament play and you're playing quality opponents in the Big 12 every single night, you got to worry for them. But then they're playing the whole big old sloppy team of Iowa State too in that first round. I hate that matchup so much. I hate that those teams got put together because those are both teams I was like, I think they're losing in the first round if you'd have put them versus Texas or TCU.
Yeah, if we go back to the last Iowa State Texas Tech game, maybe not the last one, but the one in Ames, 51-47, complete slot fest.
What did Texas Tech do versus or Iowa State do versus OSU the other day? What was it, like 30 something points?
Oh God! It was in the 30s. It was in the 30s. The final score was Iowa State. They are gross. They play good defense, and that's like kind of the mark for a lot of these Big 12 teams is we've been a solid defensive conference this year, something I don't think we've seen in a while. Usually, like even your OUs usually have a good offensive player. Baylor last year, kind of with a three-headed dragon. Kansas usually good. But really this year has been rooted in defense. Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, OU even, Iowa State, like all these teams were heavy defensive teams. So it made it virtually impossible to get good wins because it's just like the ability to hit shots this year, the lower tier Big 12 teams really need those shot makers that they didn't have. So it just made it very hard for kind of those bottom 3-4 teams to really rise to get into tournament contention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the score was 53-36 versus OSU, a team that had no hope to get anywhere for the rest of the season, and scored 20 points in the first half. And they said, okay, that's probably pretty bad. And then went out and scored 16 in the second half. Like Iowa State's got everything written over them to just start collapsing. That team is making the tournament, and it irks me inside that there's so many teams on the bubble that are going to get like replaced by a team that's scoring 36. I'm just not a big fan of Iowa State. I know Brockington's really good. I've liked the games that we've watched of him, but still, that team really irks me deep down.
I just had a minor twinge, Jameson. I know it's just sort of how you delivered it, but when you said Iowa State and then Brock in 10, but
no,
Iowa State. I was like, oh no. Not
I just wanted to jump all over.
Getting away with this.
The Iowa State fans are about to flood our comments with, "What, you don't like Brockington?"
Yeah, no.
I like Brockington. I just
Jameson gave him a nice compliment.
Also,
they'll find a way to twist his words around or something.
I was also going to say, no one is mentioning the fact that we are hosting this in a state. I understand, it's right on the border, but a state with no Big 12 teams whatsoever in it is kind of funny to me.
The state of Missouri hosting.
We're just hosting this in a completely random. Yeah, I think maybe Tulsa would be a more appropriate or fair venue, but yeah,
Oklahoma City. It was awesome back in the days when it was at the Ford Center. I remember.
Well, yeah, even with OU OU's what, the 7 seed for the tournament?
It's fine.
People would still complain though.
OU doesn't have a home court advantage at their own home arena,
OU
so it's not like it's not like having it at the Paycom arena would make any difference.
What about Dickies, Blake, and Fort Worth? Would they open their doors to this?
Dickies? Oh yeah, Dickies they're hosting, I think, the first 2 rounds of the tournament, so they're open for anything. They'll do anything.
Hear me out.
Dickies will do anything.
Dickies will do anything.
The Big 12 tournament, but all the initial games are played simultaneously, and it's at Jerry World.
just put all those like a wrestling tournament,
right? Like every single sporting event is going to the Jerry World singularity. So just don't embrace it, and embrace the fact that in the future every sporting event ever is just going to be conducted at Jerry World.
I think you're onto something. Putting 2 basketball games at the same time in a big football stadium would actually be really entertaining, but very hard for whistles and sounds, but extremely entertaining.
But you could maybe
They
you
did that
could
at
give
the
the
NCAA
players like
tournament, didn't they?
earpieces or something.
What happened? I don't know.
Well, sorry,
didn't hear
I
y'all.
cut off. Go ahead, Ty.
I was just gonna say maybe you could give them like earpieces or something.
Just
to
buzz
do
them whenever they
or like
whenever they
like little like a shock, like not like a shock, but like the Apple Watch to get vibrates or something. I don't know.
Oh man, yeah. I think they did the double games in the NCAA tournament last year when they played it at Lucas Oil, but they had a big curtain, so it was less fun. Yeah, no, I'm all for that. And if you have a little overflow, you can use the baseball arena, just across the way. Texas Live is just like the middle of it. I for one welcome our new Arlington Overlords. But anyways, let's get into it. Let's actually get into this stuff. So Blake, last time we talked at the very beginning of the Big 12 season. I got to ask, from that pod to now, which team has been your biggest surprise in the Big 12?
The Frogs! It wasn't. People are going to go Iowa State, but we talked about them. They kind of did their thing in the non-conference, saved them in the end. But really, it's about the Frogs, because about 2 weeks ago, I was finally ready that Jim Dixon was no longer going to be our head coach, that we just a typical TCU team. We beat the average teams. We lose to some really bad teams, and we get like maybe a upset, and that was LSU. And I was like, it is done. Like I thought, like our good wins at the beginning of the season with OU turned out not to be well. So it's like we're done. Jim goes on the biggest heater in like TCU sports history, beats Texas Tech at home, beats Kansas at home, and then somehow goes on the road and only loses to Kansas in Lawrence by 4 points. And like we had a chance to tie it at the end of that game. And so we went into a stretch, that final stretch. We played 6 games in 14 days. It was a gruel. It was a grind, and we still came out of it with 2 top 10 wins. That is insane to me, and really put us at the point where I wouldn't be shocked if we lost our first round game, but definitely a team you don't want to play the second round of March if we make it, because we're all defense. We just make life hard, and that's what we kind of did to a more finesse team like Kansas. Just made their life hell trying to make shots at the rim, and so we have that identity there. So I would go TCU, because TCU basketball's never good, and just really everybody besides maybe Texas, I would say really wasn't surprising where they fell at the end of the day.
Yeah, man, TCU was the most annoying team to play. Lampkin just absolutely destroyed OU inside. But I gotta say that they are kind of fun to watch. I'll give you that. And I'm happy for you. I'm happy that Jim Dixon, who I think is a great coach that TCU has.
Y'all
have been railing on this man.
I was saying today, I've already saved up all my sick time for when we inevitably sign him to a contract extension, because I'm going to be throwing up for about 3 days straight because the man can't coach. It's we have so much talent on this squad, and watching the last 5 minutes of our games is getting your heart ripped out because we miss a whole bunch of free throws. Jim Dixon, he can't call an inbounds play to save his life. We had against Kansas to clutch the game. We're trying to do a Hail Mary pass down the sideline. We can't even create separation for our players in the last 5 minutes. They're a horribly coached team. We turn over the ball still 25% of the time. So we do still have our big flaws, and those are attributed to Dixon. But the talent on the squad that's finally kind of gelled together has been able to overpower the just horrible coaching mess that we have right now.
What's going to happen? You already ran out Gary. You're going to run out Jim Dixon, and then
no, we aren't. That's the problem. I want to run him out of the building after.
That's what I'm saying. You're going to run him out. You're going to run everyone out, and then end up just being absolute garbage pre 2000s TCU. With nobody showing up to games. Every sport 2 losses.
I don't know how to draw up inbound plays, but I can at least get our guys in and shoot free throws. I want to see, I would become, if I had the money, I would throw millions of dollars just to watch one TCU practice, to see what the heck they are practicing for hours each day, because we can't hit free throws, we can't pass, we turn over the ball, we're dribbling off our own feet. Like, what are we practicing? It's not shots because we're not good at shot creating. It's not dribbling because we're always bouncing off of our feet. It's not inbounds plays. It's not free throws. It's nothing. So I just want to see what the heck we're doing. But we're still good besides that. We somehow have this like amazing young core that's gelled together really well, that's really energetic, and it kind of overcomes some of those like really glaring flaws with our team.
Yeah, I'm looking at some odds right now for the tournament. Plus 1,600 is what I'm looking at TCU. I mean, obviously, it could be very different on many sites. Honestly, kind of a little bit of a spicy pick, but in all honesty, Blake, if you have any futures on the Big 12 tournament, are you hedging it at all, or who are you thinking like should be the favorite?
That's hard because I don't want to go like straight chalk of like Kansas or Baylor. And, like, that kind of leads me to, like, if you go, like, honestly, if I was going to go, I would go TCU because I don't have the bracket up right now, but I'm pretty sure we could hit a second-round matchup versus Kansas.
Yeah,
which would be very favorable. We somehow have their number. So it's like, if we haven't been able to get past Texas this season, but if we're able to string together those two games, that's, like, a good hedge opportunity if we do get hot, like, going into the tournament. But honestly, like, I guess my next team that probably has like a third best odds, and even I don't know how good of a bet this would be, is just Texas Tech. And I know, Jameson, you hate them. The offense isn't as good, but they have the number one defense in the nation, and that just travels. It's like something that's reliable. You can hang your hat on that they're probably in these games are not going to get blown out. They're going to stay in it. It's just like they're kind of frustrating in the sense that they're not the best shot creators.
My thing is with Texas Tech basketball, their defense is so good, but why the heck did they not make anyone on all Big 12 defense?
I don't trust awards like that. I really don't. Like, Baycott for UNC didn't get ACC Player of the Year, which made absolutely no sense. So I, like, just don't trust those. Like, I just
no love for Londis Williams?
No, no. I have no love for really anybody in the ACC this year. Maybe Duke, but not even then. Like, the ACC was a trash conference this year.
Well, especially with how Duke went out and the Coach K thing. I mean,
don't even bring that up with Blake on here.
It's so good, so good. Yeah, I gotta say, I would say we're looking at that first real day of games, not talking about the play-in with K-State and West Virginia. I'll go ahead and say it. I think Iowa State has probably the best odds of a lower seed because here's the thing. Don't get me wrong. They're gross. They're weird. But every time they play in Kansas City, that entire stadium becomes like Hilton Coliseum South. And they are always a tough out in the Big 12 because they're grimy. They're dirty. They're weird. But you know what? They always find a way whenever they're playing in KC. They go on runs.
It's the chili link.
It's the chili link. And, you know, they're I don't know if they can get past Baylor, but, you know, the Bears are kind of beat up. I think if I had to fade one of the top twos, one of the Big 12 regular season champions, I think I'd fade Baylor over Kansas.
And you're also assuming that they're going to beat Texas Tech.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was saying that I think Iowa State beating Texas Tech is probably the most likely of those upsets.
So I do want to jump in because this kind of dovetails into sort of my Big 12 tournament favorite. And just bottom line up front, it's Baylor because I like the storyline of them winning it in football when absolutely everyone in the world had them pegged as last in the Big 12. And then they ended up winning it. All the experts, anyone who knew what they were talking about, Adam last, and they shocked the world and came back and won the Big 12 in football. And I like them because they're a favorite, but they're not the favorite. And I like their path in the bracket, right? Like they have to. And I like Bobby's idea of Iowa State coming in chippy and knocking out Texas Tech because that means that Baylor then faces Tech in the next round, unless I'm got my math off, which I think is a good matchup. But I think even if Tech doesn't win that one, I think that Iowa State I think that Baylor has either one of them in the next round and can at least make it to the finals where they get a good chance. And maybe Kansas doesn't make it there, or who knows. But I really like Baylor just on the storyline aspect. So who knows? Not the best throwing money down odds, but I don't want to go against OU, but it's OU basketball. So
I
is it
do
really
I
OU?
do like Baylor the most, but they're playing against in the first round the most desperate team in the Big 12. And even though obviously Baylor's a much better team and is very strategically sound, it's not fun going against a team that it's legitimately do or die for, their tournament. And Blake, am I wrong? I'm not speaking
You
any
are
kind
wrong,
of
but yeah, but like K-State and West Virginia's backs are technically against the wall.
No,
so
their back
dead.
is in the dungeon.
We'll talk about OU's tournament chances in a second and how much of a long shot it is.
Well, I'm saying they actually have like a light at the end of the tunnel. All the other teams
they don't.
They can make the tournament if they win 2 games. I don't think they can, but if they
don't know about that. I don't know about that.
It's a conversation at least then.
I think they're at least in the door where you can talk about it. Those are 2 major wins, 2 top 10 wins. A theoretical Baylor and a theoretical Texas Tech. That's pretty good.
Teams. Yeah, but they have 8 teams ahead of them that they have to pass. That is that's assuming all those get knocked out. So right now, I looked up Joe Lunardi. He released who's on the outs right now. These are the teams in front of OU. We got Indiana, Dayton, BYU, which BYU's eliminated, so they can't do much work. So passable. Virginia Tech, UVA, VCU, Florida, Texas A&M. If any of those get any wins in front of them, that's a lot. That's a lot of tarmac that you got to catch up on. 8 teams that and a lot of those in the ACC that are inevitably going to beat up on each other a little bit, but it's going to boost 1 or 2 ahead of you into that spot. And that's assuming everything perfectly goes your way. Well, it's a lot.
I don't know if it matters, but you do have the head-to-head against Florida. I don't know if.
And now it's just no.
I'm sure that doesn't matter much
because it's like a whole resume. It's like a whole resume. So in Florida, I believe they have the win over Kentucky, which is like a really, really good win. So I just think OU has a. I think so too.
We were in Vegas when that happened. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they beat them by 1. It was
they did.
Yeah, they beat them whenever. Yeah.
I just look. I get it. That is a lot of runway, but you got to say, I feel like selection committees like teams who get hot at the end. And while what they've done recently with OSU, West Virginia,
getting hot at the end of OU's conference schedule, if you look at the back half, is something semblance of a Trae Young year. It's just complete. I know they stringed together 3 last games, but my goodness, once Big 12 play started, OU just has they just don't have the wins there. They just don't. They don't have they have the good win against Texas Tech. And then the good win against Arkansas. Those, I think, are 2 really good wins to hang your hat on. But then most of it just starts to kind of fall through the floor. It's like Florida, Iowa State, TCU, or not even TCU, OSU. It's like those teams are great teams, but not enough, I think, to just boost them over an Indiana or somebody that's just has those good quality Big Ten wins that I just feel like OU wasn't able to get in conference play.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. But the thing is, it's silly to say that OU players don't think that there's a shot and they're fighting for it. West Virginia and Kansas State players, I don't probably think that at all because obviously it's just not theoretically possible. But OU players, and I can tell you that Porter's getting them worked up to where that's a team that I would rather not be playing the 7th seed with it. Not many 7 seeds can say, hey, I think I can win the tournament if I win a couple games. You don't see that normally. So as the number 2 seed in the tournament in Baylor, a team that is easily, tied pretty much first place with Kansas, this is not your that's what I'm saying. This is not your run of the mill 7 seed. This is going to be a tough game. So even though I like Baylor the most to win this tournament, that is not a walk as a first round opponent in conference tournament that a lot of conferences have.
Yeah,
I think you.
Go ahead, Ty.
I think you make
Go
a good point there, Jameson, because this is something that's been in doubt or in debate by some people, and I'll be quick so everyone else can sort of take it. But I think what you just said, Jameson, about the strength top to bottom of the teams in the Big 12 when it comes to basketball unequivocally proves that the Big 12 is undoubtedly the superior conference when it comes to basketball by far. There are some, I understand, top heavy, really good conferences. There's one in the Southeast that comes to mind that, in football, also very top heavy and gets a lot of hype for that, that people think is the best. And there's some stuff out East, there's some stuff out West, and there's some stuff, up Northeast and whatever else. But I think
Good directions.
there's a lot of directions, but right in the middle, I guess the sort of the southern part of the middle is where the best basketball is played across the board. And we're starting to get into to just a joke here, but I think it's, in all seriousness, the Big 12 tournament, I hope these are good games across the board. And I believe they will be. And I think that will prove to people that this is without a doubt the best conference in basketball, at least this year and in recent times.
And Blake, I'll ask you this as well. I agree. Best conference in basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Some might say otherwise, and take it credit my credibility, because again, that's fair. I don't know. I don't watch college basketball as much as others.
It's not
but
fair.
Let's be honest.
I barely watch college basketball at all. And
it's deep as hell. It's deep as hell, and that's why it's dangerous. That's why at number 7 or like Baylor can play its first game against a scrappy dog like OU and be in trouble. And I gotta ask, Blake, of Kansas and Baylor, which one needs that one win in the tournament more to try to lock down that 1 seed?
This is hard. I think probably Baylor needs it a little bit more than Kansas, but in the actual bracketology stuff, but I really got to go Kansas. From Baylor all year long, they struggled with injuries. Then Jonathan Tamatachua went down, and that was their big hit. But Flo Thamba has honestly really stepped up recently, and they still got ever since he went down, they got wins versus Texas, they got wins versus Kansas. They've been able what I preached on the last podcast I was on was Baylor's depth, and it's really starting to show is they lose kind of this X factor guy and another guy fills the hole. But what I don't like about Kansas right now is just I've obviously watched them a lot this past week via Texas and then 2 times with TCU, and it's just I don't like their core. It's Bill Self has always been a guy that he likes to run a lot of his offense out of the post. He's always had good big men. And David McCormick is not that guy. He is really soft around the rim. He doesn't seem to if you put a body on him and get some contact and just jump up with him, he can't make shots around the rim. And he's the good plus you get with him as a big man is he can hit free throws, which you rarely see, I feel in college, but he's just really soft at the rim. And Abaji, he's probably going to be the Big 12 player of the year, and rightfully so. He's really good, but down the stretch, he's been super inconsistent. The second game versus TCU, he played relatively well, but the first game, he had less than 10 points. And then the other day, versus Texas, he didn't score until about 5 minutes left in the game. I just don't like the direction that they're heading right now. I think teams have kind of figured them out because they want to run so much through McCormick, where Kansas' strengths, I think, this year is the three-point shooting. I think Christian Braun, I think Remy Martin, both of those guys are elite shooters, and even Abaji himself, but they just refuse to kick it out to the open man recently, and I just don't understand that. So I think for a confidence perspective, I think Kansas definitely needs a run to kind of get back the rhythm that they've lost, I think, in the last week or so.
I've noticed the exact same thing from Kansas because I feel like Remy Martin and Ochai Agbaji should be getting way more run, even though Agbaji, gets plenty of it. I think that should be your dynamic 1-2 punch. It just doesn't make sense, Kansas's offense, to me whenever I watch it. I just feel like they have so much star power and there's so much potential. But like you said, the McCormick running through, I legitimately, I had the same exact point in my head. earlier whenever I was watching them versus Texas. Things just don't make sense. A couple more things with this tournament before we wrap things up. What do you think of Texas basketball, Blake? Because Texas really has been kind of a team that just sticks with a lot of teams. They keep things close, but it seems like they can never really push through on some of those big games. Do they have any legitimacy in talking about them in in-game of, tournaments or getting far in the NCAA or Big 12, or are they just going to be a team that keeps things close and makes good games?
I think we're going to see a lot of kind of what we saw under Shaka Smart. Like, it's going to be – they're a good team, yes, but, I've had issues with them this year just because it's their two best wins have been Kansas and Tennessee, both at home. But every time they've gone to a neutral floor or away early in the season versus Gonzaga and Seton Hall and some of those teams, they just played not well. And you kind of said it perfectly, Jameson. It's they're suited to stay with teams just because that team obviously has talent, but I think media overhypes them just because a lot of the media had them as the number 2 team in the nation coming in just because of that. They had that many good transfers that joined that team, but I'm not really buying Chris Beard this year. I think Chris Beard, he's still a good coach, but I think Mark Adams really helped him on the defensive side of the ball, and I just don't trust this Texas team. I think win, maybe make it to the Sweet 16, but this was a team people had going into this year that were saying was an easy number 2 in the Big 12 behind Kansas, if not could overtake them and be that number 2 team in the nation. And they just really don't have that separation power. They're good defensively, pretty good offensively, but just really don't offer anything special that it gives them a clear edge over any of the top 16, 17, 18 teams in the nation. So I just think they're good, not great, and just high floor, not a very high ceiling going into this tournament.
So if we had to go with legitimate Final Four contenders in the Big 12, it's probably those 3 of Baylor, Kansas, and Texas Tech, right?
Yeah, it's Kansas. We kind of went over it, but if they can get everything together, they're obviously one of the top 10 teams in the nation. Baylor, kind of shaky with injuries this year, but have obviously in the kind of the final 2 or 3 weeks or so have been able to wrap everything back together. And I think Scott Drew has even though early in his career wasn't a good tournament coach, I think last year shook a lot of demons and has experience there. So those guys are easy Final Four. And then I guess the next one is just Texas Tech. I looked up today. It's Texas Tech whenever they made their national champion or run to the national championship. They had the number 1 defense in Kim Palm and top 25 offense. This year they have a number 1 defense and top 50 offense. So I don't see them making it as far as that original 2019 team, but it's just having that defense always travels. It's that's the good thing about a lot of these Big 12 teams is they're so defensive heavy that if they get hot from shooting, they can easily make it deep into the tournament, and they are good at the one thing that can show up in the tournament. But I think just those 3 teams, I just don't see Texas going far. I really don't. There's been nothing about this year that has been a good blowout win or a good win on the road or anything that's Texas is for real. They're one of those Final Four contenders. Sweet 16, I don't even say Elite. I think just Sweet 16 and then bounce probably.
Yeah. See, I don't know. Because I look at other conferences and I think about the fact that all these other teams that you could consider as a top 4, even Elite 8 teams is the issue is they ain't played nobody, and I don't know that they could sustain the grueling rigor of a day-to-day, week-to-week Big 12 basketball schedule. I just don't see it. So I think anyone in the Big 12 tournament, I think, we have 7 teams. I think the Elite 8 is just, should be the 7 Big 12 teams and then 1 at large.
I mean,
which is also
I'm not
should
complaining.
come from the Big 12. Yeah. Which should come from the Big 12. So
one of the new Big 12 teams,
Texas State. Yeah,
I am worried for the Big 12 because I felt like last year was the Big 10 was so good. It had all these great teams and then just got kind of the floor wiped with them in the first 2 rounds. And that doesn't mean they're bad teams. It's a single elimination tournament. Literally anything can happen. But it's just I'm a little scared for just one of those unfortunate like visual things where it's like we had a lot of good teams, but we only got like one or two to like the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, and then it's just like everybody's like they're not that good of a conference, and it's like, well, that's just kind of the nature of a single elimination tournament. It's like you never know what's going to happen.
I mean, Blake, if you lose a 1-day tournament situation, 6-4 to a different conference, you're clearly worse. So, that's just kind of the nature of it. But I mean, just think about like last year with the Big 12, they all kind of bowed out after round 2. But Baylor won it all and everything's okay. So it's perception's a very weird thing, and can be erased if your conference is the one hoisting it all. Could clear out that old, that old narrative of, the Big 12 hadn't won a championship since 2008 Kansas, those narratives could get swept out quickly.
Yeah.
So
it's like the Big 10 hasn't won one since Izzo in like 2001. Like it's one of those things. You can have good conferences. You can have good teams that just don't perform well in the tournament. It's like some of the best college basketball teams of all time just never made the championship. Even it's the reason why people think Gonzaga fails in March. It's like they really only had one or two bad years, but really those one or two bad years where they got upset, it allows people to dictate that Gonzaga is just not a good tournament team, which is just if you look at the actual results and the seeding and how the teams they played, is very far from the truth.
And it's damn hard to win this tournament. It is.
Yeah,
It's an absolute crapshoot, and that's why we love it. That's why you kind of can't just pin it all on that. It's not the best way to decide the best team, but it is absolutely wonderful, and I love it. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
I absolutely love bracketology. I love, and this is so weird. I love the math that goes into it, like the statistical probabilities and the chance, and just bracketology is an amazing. I think you can call it a science. Yeah, it is so.
Yeah, I have on my Kindle starting to read Joe Lenardi's book.
You would have a Kindle. You already have that pulled up. Hey, blur that out. No free ads. We get paid for this now, Blake. Block him out. How you delete someone else's tweet?
Bracketology is so funny to me too, because they'll spend all this time on everything, and then you have play in UCLA and make a run to the Final Four out of nowhere. It's that we were all fading like round 1, like pre-round 1. So
that's why I love it.
I can't wait to dive in next week for the full March Madness list. But before we go, I want to go around the horn and ask y'all's genuine Big 12 tournament champion. You can go chalk. You can go get wild with it. I don't care. But I'll start with the wildest of the wild cards. Ty, who do you got?
To win the Big 12 or overall?
Big 12.
No, just the Big 12.
OU. You got to go. We got to go OU. It's an OU podcast. I got OU. I like the Baylor storyline. Obviously, I like the one next to Kansas and sort of the historical bias of picking Kansas when it comes to basketball. I don't think Texas Tech can play outside of Lubbock. I don't think that anyone else is even a factor. Iowa State would be a Big Ten team if they could get anyone above a C average to go to school there. So yeah, give me OU. The 7 seed. Seven's a lucky number. Give me the Sooners to
Iowa State fans in the comments. I know Iowa State's an AAU
Bring
school.
them on. It's
okay.
I don't care.
Ty wasn't being serious. He's just
I was dead serious. Why are they in the Big 12?
And also feel free to tell me about why your corn is better than Nebraska's. Anyway, so I'm just gonna go with mine. I like Kansas. I know it's chalk. I know it's boring, but you got the Jayhawks, in Kansas City. This feels like a run for them.
It's a city named after them.
I mean, not in there. I mean, they're playing in enemy territory, being in Missouri, of course. Their arch rival. So they're playing in a state that's usually does not like Kansas. So clearly a factor there. But you know what? KC has always been kind of the Jayhawks. This feels like a year where they go on a run. Just looking at it, I'm not in love with TCU or Texas to go on a run. Obviously, the two play-in teams are kind of garbage. I mean, maybe Kansas State makes things weird.
Oh,
I
goodness gracious.
really don't like them at all. I see Kansas having just a waltz to the championship, and whoever comes out on that other end is going to have had a grind. We usually don't see a lot of 1 versus 2s in this tournament. So whoever comes out on the other end of that, I think would have had a pretty tough go. So give me the Jayhawks to take home the tournament title. Jameson, who do you got?
I'm going to have Texas versus Baylor in the championship, and Texas coming up just a wee bit short and losing to Baylor, kind of like what I talked about. They'll get a big win versus Kansas, but they won't be able to finish the job.
Like
TCU Baylor, TCU wins, last second shot.
Sure.
Shut
up. Give us the serious answer.
I think if I look at it, this team can get hot. This team has that potential to get hot. If we don't turn over the ball every 2 or 3 possessions, we're good. We're good and can play. And I think Texas has beat us twice this year, but the last time in Austin, we were up on them by 10 with 5 minutes left. Jamie Dixon did typical Jamie Dixon things and lost that game. But I think we're going to right some wrongs this tournament. We're going to beat Texas. We're going to beat Kansas. And then on a last-second shot, we are going to beat Baylor. We are going to be the Big 12 champ. Jamie Dixon is going to get probably a 6-year extension. It just ripped my heart out.
This is the same guy that was talking bad game about his inbound passes and last second play and saying that now they're going to hit a last second shot. You think that they're going to take it in transition?
Do you think the Mocs ran that play tonight? No, it was just heaved to heaven and it went in. That's all you need in March sometimes. You don't need strategy. You don't need strategy sometimes. You just need storylines. And so I can...
Blake Texas or TCU fan fiction.
Blake, just to clarify, you keep saying we. I would like to clarify for the record, for the jury and for the listeners. Where did you graduate from last year? Just one word answer. One word answer. Where did you graduate from last year?
Okay, that doesn't count though.
No, that was 2 words. There's a 1-word answer to this, and it's Baylor. For the record, let the record reflect. Blake is a graduate of Baylor University. I don't know why he keeps saying we in reference to TCU.
If anything, I just chose both of my teams into the final, and I chose one or the other.
Let's also clarify, Blake was a Patriots fan for a long time. He was a Tampa Bay fan.
I was a Lions fan. I was
Blake was a complete bandwagoner, but not like that. He only got bandwagon the crappiest teams, and now he's a Cowboy fan.
That's what I do, and I get shit on for. Jameson, I said shit, so there goes our G-rated.
It's okay.
Thing.
I said bitch earlier.
Jameson poops on me for being a lifelong SMU, Colorado, Navy,
Arizona State.
SMU.
How can you not be an SMU fan? They blatantly cheated for no reason whatsoever, and they have a great color.
Winning is not reason.
What they didn't win? They didn't win anything, though.
That's true. They won the Southwest Conference one time, I think.
Yeah, they won a group of 5 championships.
They won a conference with Rice in it.
Which
for some reason everyone.
What? Okay, the Southwest Conference was cool.
They went all out for cheating.
Yeah, you had Rice in it.
A G5.
So we have Kansas in our football conference. It's about the same. At least Rice is good at academics.
Kansas won an Orange Bowl in the past 20 years.
Has Rice randomly won a national championship back in the early 1900s or something? We just don't know about.
The stadium hosted a Super Bowl.
Okay.
How?
Houston.
Oh.
It was pre-Astrodome, but yeah,
I've heard that album.
Probably Rice's biggest contribution to American society is getting mentioned in a JFK speech of why does Rice play Texas? So they, why do we try to go to the moon? Why does Rice play Texas? We try to do the impossible. Believe we've been to the moon more times than Rice has beaten Texas since since that speech, which is just beautiful. But we're rambling
I
at
will
this
say
point.
Rice, I think, is mentioned in Friday Night Lights, which arguably is more significant to American society than JFK.
Well, okay, the movie or the
QAnon, QAnon or whatever would disagree with you, Ty.
Here we go.
Oh no!
Here comes the
Can we talk
listener
about how
saying Bobby is too political.
Can we talk about how Blake pronounces QAnon? QAnon?
QAnon.
QAnon?
QAnon. Okay.
It's definitely QAnon.
Just to clarify the record, I have no idea what JFK stood for politically or even what party he was with. I could not care less. So.
Is JFK Jr. back yet, Blake? Have
Changing
you
the
seen him walk around?
subject, Rice won the 1947 Orange Bowl 8-0. It was not a national championship.
There we go, Bobby.
But they won. They beat Tennessee 8-0 in 1947. And won the 1938 Cotton Bowl Classic.
Was it 4 layups or was it just all free throws?
That's funny. Rice. All right, folks. That's probably the end of this show. We should probably log off. But Blake, thanks for coming on, man. Always a good time.
Thank
you. We hope to see a lot more of you with March Madness and all this. So definitely looking forward to the March Madness pod next week.
Oh, yes, I'm looking forward to it. You know, I've been basically in the film room grinding, watching mid-majors, and I'm coming with my mid-major hot takes next week. I got to pick my new Montana, my new Big Sky Conference champion, or maybe it's the Mocs. Who knows? But
it's funny because Blake will say mid-majors, and then he'll mention a school that no one has heard of before.
They are mid-major. That is what mid-major is.
That is kind of the purpose of mid-major, I guess. But
I'm not like, oh, Villanova, that mid-major school, nor do I refer to as the major conferences as Power 5 in basketball. That does not exist in basketball. There's no Power 5.
So
they think Power 6.
So in terms of our format, I'm going to go ahead and propose this live on the pod. So I say we get all 4 of us in, and then
God.
All 4 of us in. I just will name it off. Jameson, Blake, and Ty make their picks, and then I decide which one should go through. If there's
no,
wait, there's no tie.
Bobby.
There's no tie.
You're trying to cover for your lack of ability.
That
actually would make no sense.
If there should be a neutral sort of person picking at random, it should be me, who obviously knows nothing about college basketball.
That's why we had it at 3 people, Bobby, so there would be no ties.
I got a brilliant idea. We do an online buzzer like Jeopardy style every single game, and first one to buzz in gets to pick, and we'll see where our bracket goes.
We do a Kahoot.
I briefly forgot how math works there. We'll figure it out, but
I think this is a brilliant idea. I'm sticking with this. First one to buzz in gets the pick.
Bobby, we had the perfect system of how to choose a group bracket, and you decided to reinvent what was not broken. You tried to fix it.
I immediately tried to fix it by breaking it and creating a
No. Bobby tried to benefit himself. He tried to game the game.
I didn't want to game the game.
Bobby,
I screwed up. I'm sorry.
Back and yeah.
It's okay. The listeners have all logged off by now. That's fine. But hey, thank y'all so much for listening. This is always a good time. Jameson, Ty, Blake, thanks for coming on. Always fun chatting with y'all. And I'm looking forward to the 4 some odd hours that we'll have recording next week's pod. We'll see how it goes. But anyways, have a good night, everyone. Enjoy yourself some conference tournaments. And we'll catch you next time for the big dance. Have a good one. Boomer Sooner. Go Frogs. Whatever.